On this episode of Delivering Marketing Joy, we talk with Joe Pulizzi about epic content marketing and why you should stop renting media and own it. Hi there, and welcome to another edition of Delivering Marketing Joy. I am your host, Kirby Hasseman, and today I'm very excited to have a special guest, Joe Pulizzi. Joe is the founder of Content Marketing Institute and the author of a really cool book I highly recommend, Epic Content Marketing. Thanks so much for being a part of the show, Joe.
Kirby, I'm happy to be here. Always excited to talk content marketing. So let's get into the questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
you got it.
Right after it, you in your book, Epic Content Marketing, you said that good content marketing was owning media as opposed to renting it. I thought that was a really cool statement. Can you explain what you mean by that and why it's so important?
I think there's a couple different ways to look at it. If you look at it in the traditional sense, over the past 50 or so years, we've been really good at paying for our media, and we've been trying to look at, okay, where are our customers hanging out, and who's built really good audiences out there, and then let's put an advertisement in there, whether it's newspapers, magazines, televisions. Let's do that, and we'll try to distract them a little bit from the content that they really want, and just do it that way. And we've been doing that for decades now. So that's one way to look at it. And I want to say, hey, I want to own the content. I want to be the story. I want to be the ones that when people have interests, problems that they need to solve, they go to us directly instead of us having to shout and say, oh, please look at us. Right. We're awesome because we have this great product or service, and just solve problems through some type of content platform or content brand. So that's one way to look at it. The second thing is, and this is what we're seeing in a lot of social media that's going on right now, you have a lot of brands that are saying, hey, I want to be on Facebook, I want to be on Twitter, I want to be on LinkedIn, and I love all those platforms, and we use them all in different ways, but the problem is we use those as our audience building platforms, and we're like, okay, great, I'm going to build an audience now on Facebook, and we put a lot of content into it, and we build a lot of likes, and then, oh, Facebook changed the rules. Oh my gosh, now they're not going to let us, now our audience doesn't see our posts on Facebook anymore, and we put all this time and attention in building a platform on social media, and what we need to recognize is let's use those for how we can use them right now, but we could get up tomorrow morning and Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and YouTube, they could just say, oh, sorry, you don't get access to that audience anymore. Didn't you know that was our audience that we built for you to use? Now you're going to have to pay to play, or the rules changed in some way. Google Plus is going through the same thing. They've had multiple changes in that organization. Google doesn't even know what Google Plus is going to be. That's my concern, is just be careful if you don't have it on your own blog, or you're not building your own subscription database like through an email newsletter. You can use all those other platforms, but you're probably renting their space right now. So we have to look at how do we use those right now to build our own subscriber database and our own audience.
Yeah, that's it. And when I read that I really took that to heart, because I was pushing through those mediums, and after reading it, I'm like, okay, I really need to rethink this, or at least add to what I'm already doing. And
there's nothing wrong with it, right? I mean, it's great. I mean, we've got a lot of really good examples, let's say, on YouTube, and they build a lot of subscribers. But if you look at look at Jimmy Fallon. Like, Jimmy Fallon does a great job sharing those regular updates on YouTube. Go to the end of it and look at all the ways to subscribe. And they're really trying to build an audience directly if they can. Because, great, subscribe to YouTube. That's step one. But maybe subscribe to this email. How can we get more data from you here so we can have that direct connection?
Yeah. One of the things that I also thought was interesting in the book was your definition, the way you defined it. You said, content marketing isn't really new. The term's new, but you mentioned John Deere doing this a long time ago. So what do the best content marketing strategies sort of have in common?
Yeah, I mean, John Deere started in 1895, the Furrow magazine. Now, I love it because if you say, who is the largest media company in the farming industry? It's not a media company. It's John Deere. 1.5 million subscribers, 40 countries, 14 different languages. And of course, it's much older than that, but I love that case study. It's especially coming from a big manufacturer like John Deere. A lot of things. I think the most important thing is probably a focus on a specific niche audience. I think where a lot of companies go wrong is they say, okay, how many people can we attract at one time? And that's not the goal. We want to focus on the specific needs of our audience and how we can solve those needs ongoing. The second thing is consistency. Kirby, I can't tell you how I don't want to say how tired I am because I totally get it, but everybody going out with a content campaign. Hey, we're going to go do this for 3 months or 6 months or 9 months. Content marketing is a marathon and it's not a sprint. So it takes time and consistency. So if you look at the time part, like for example, my new book is called Content Inc. And we interviewed all kinds of entrepreneurs. And what we found out is that it took between 15 and 17 months on average to monetize that content or to see return from a content marketing program. And that takes patience. That takes time. That means if I'm going to do an email newsletter, I've got to do it every Friday at 10 o'clock. If that's what I'm doing my email newsletter. If I do a daily blog, it's the same time. It's that keeping that promise of content with your customers. And most brands are horrible at that. Media companies are great at it. And that's what I think we need to learn from media companies. And I love the idea. If you look at a media company, what we can take as a best practice from it is every one of them has an editorial mission statement. It's like, okay, here's our audience. Here's our real specific target audience. Here's what we're going to deliver. It's not a product or service. Here's the kind of content we're going to deliver. And then what's the audience outcome? What's in it for them? Am I trying to help them get a better job, live a better life in some way, depending on what the industry is? If you look at a brand side or a company side, it's all about, hey, we want to sell more products or services and we're going to talk about this stuff and try to generate this amount of demand. That's not how a media company does it. So I think if you can set up a content marketing mission statement, like an editorial mission statement, that can drive your entire content marketing strategy for good. And then the last thing I'll say, because there's a lot, I could go on forever on that topic. The last thing I'll say is actually documenting the content marketing strategy means something. So in our latest research that we did, Content Marketing Institute did with marketing props, we found out that there are two critical differentiators between the really effective content marketers and not so effective. The first is they actually document the content marketing strategy. They actually have it written down, which you think should be a no-brainer, but the majority of brands don't have any strategy. They have we should do a blog, or we should do a magazine, or we should do an e-newsletter, and they don't figure out, okay, why are we doing this? Who's the specific audience? What do we know about them? What are the pain points? What are the stories that they need to hear? How are we going to measure this? And map it all out. And I really don't care if it's on a cocktail napkin, as long as you get something mapped out to that. The second point was those that get that strategy, they actually share it with their team and review it on a consistent basis, instead of what you and I have both seen is, hey, let's do the strategy and then we'll stick it in a drawer and we won't go back to it. It's a living document. So we want to refer to that content marketing strategy for as often as we can. But the best, like larger enterprises that we work with, they seem to get like Monday morning or Tuesday morning meetings. They get together, they review the plan. Are we on point? Are we on strategy? And do we need to change or evolve?
Yeah. So in other words, you need to treat content marketing like, quite frankly, you should be treating all of your marketing and your sales, right?
That's right. It's a living, I mean, the strategy itself is a living document. I mean, just because you're starting, and that's the best place to go, right? You got to start, understand what is the feedback that we're getting. Are we on point? Are the stories that we're telling resonating? But I mean, for us at CMI, I mean, our it changes weekly, sometimes daily.
Yeah, right.
This doesn't work. This topic doesn't work. Is our audience still the right audience? There are a number of audiences here that are underserved that we need to look at on other platforms. And how does our magazine audience differ than our blog audience, than our podcast audience? And it's constantly a challenge. That's why you need to staff it. You need to resource it properly. You need to work with the right agencies to make sure that this is something that we're taking seriously as a part of our organizational culture. And we're basically treating our customers, I think, with more respect. We're treating them better because we're trying to help them, not necessarily by just saying, hey, buy our product, but by, hey, this content can really add to to the experience of you working with us. Yeah, we'd like you to buy, but really, we think we can help you regardless of that. And those companies that do that sell more.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Final question for you. I read actually in leading up to the new book, which I can't wait. It's coming out in September, right?
September, you got it. Absolutely.
All right. But you said the surest way for failure in business is to follow old, outdated rules. What are some examples and how can you overcome that?
Well, I think get it, right? I don't. We go into these big companies, big enterprises with multiple silos, and you do a content audit, and 99% of the content they're creating is feature, benefit. It's all about them. They've got so much content. So if you look at whatever you believe, if you believe in the buyer's journey or the funnel or whatever you want to call it, They have all this funnel like right before conversion, like like almost all of it. And then they're getting some at the attention at the top, and they're trying to bring in the top of the funnel, and then actually very little on the loyalty retention side. And that's where I think most of the content needs to go to those two spots. I think we need a really, really good onboarding experience, awareness experience. So that's one thing that I would really focus on. Then we need an amazing loyalty experience for them to keep them on. Like John Deere's The Furrow Magazine is one of the best loyalty retention programs around. We have plenty of that near conversion content. We have plenty of that salesy content, and that's the mistake that most companies make. And that's why it's hard to change that, because if you look at the silo structure and the way that we've been set up, which, by the way, it was set up great when we were in the mass media, paid media era. I mean, if you were in the 70s, early 80s, you should have advertised. I mean, it made perfect sense to do that. Now, the consumer is in complete control. They can do whatever they want to. Our audiences are scattered all over the place. We can draw them in if we're smart about it. And I think thinking about that is important. And the second thing I'll say is there's too much content marketing going on just looking at activity and not looking at building an audience. So if you see a brand create a program, they'll look at all kinds of engagement metrics and web traffic, and those things are important, but they're not nearly as important as actually getting a subscriber, actually building an audience. And that sort of makes me sad as they put these $1 million, and even a small company, whether it's tens of thousands or millions of dollars, they'll put these programs together. And at the end of the day, we got X million amounts of impressions and we've got all this web traffic and we're trying to measure it. Well, the way you measure it is look at the difference between your subscribers and those that don't subscribe to your content and how they engage in the content. I think what you'll see, if you're patient, you'll see that those subscribers have more positive business results for you. Do they buy more? Do they stay longer? Do they close faster? When they close, do they close for a bigger amount? Is it the salespeople have to take less amount of time? Maybe there's less customer service issues with that. I mean, there's all kinds of ways that you can measure it. But if you don't have the audience first, if you don't have the subscriber, very, very difficult to measure. So those are the things that I look at. And I'm sort of on the hilltop here talking about, look, build your audience. Do what media companies have been doing since the dawn of time. And I grew up in media and publishing. And what we did was we said, hey, the most important thing that drives the entire business is our circulation, is our audience. It drives every part. The same thing is true for your brand, and you're just not selling your products and services at that time. You're going to build a loyal relationship, and then you're going to look for opportunities to sell after.
Cool. That's great advice, Joe, and I really appreciate you taking the time.
You got it.
As with everybody, I give them 3 questions. I give them the opportunity to ask me one. So you have one for me.
Well, I know you're doing the video series. I know you're up on podcasts, all the new technology. I wanted to know from you kind of what, if you were starting out as a company or you don't have a huge budget, would you look at the opportunities and of course I know there's a lot of different questions in there, but would you look at the opportunities of video and podcasting, and which one are you sort of leaning more toward now as iTunes has put maybe a little bit more behind the podcasting with their app and there seems to be a new resurgence in podcasting? I mean, what do you think and what are you hearing?
I think, Joe, great question, by the way. For me, and the bias within me is I have a background in video. And so video comes very naturally to me. I know how to leverage that, I think. So and it's one of the reasons I'm doing what I'm doing here. I created a video series, but the reason I created the video series is so that I could connect with people like you and really, we could share platforms and share, and I'm learning a lot too, which is pretty cool. But what I found is, I tell you what, your point is right on, is that people are coming back and saying, man, I really like the show, but can you put it into a podcasting format? And so what I've been doing is kind of then converting what we've been doing here to the audio podcasting. And so for me, that's what I've been doing, and the results have been pretty good so far.
Well, I think what that plays into is that a lot of people say, well, what should we... we have the story to tell. So let's say you've done the strategy. Then what do we use? Well, you have a natural ability on video. Somebody had, you have a face for, some people have a face for radio. So maybe podcasting works out better in that case. But that's where, when we talk about getting content from customers, from internal customers like your CEO or your employees of some kind, Don't say, hey, it has to be in this way. I need 500 words. And get however they most naturally do it. Is it an email Q&A? Is it a video? Do you need them recording it on the phone or through their mobile device or whatever? And then you get the raw content and help them tell the story. So I like that aspect.
Play to their strengths, right?
Absolutely.
Cool. Joe, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it. Please check out Joe's new book coming out in September. I honestly do recommend it. If you haven't read Epic Content Marketing, it's a really, really good book. I'm not just saying that. So check that out. And Joe, thanks again, and maybe we'll do it another time.
Fantastic, Kirby. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, that wraps up another edition of Delivering Marketing Joy. We will see you next time. Hey, thanks for watching, but wait! Can you do me a favor? Please subscribe to my channel. If you haven't done it already, the way to do it's right over here. And hey, if you want to watch the last episode, check that out over here. Again, before you leave, subscribe!